The massive alien ship appeared over New York City without warning. It was bigger than anything humans had ever built, stretching across the sky like a dark metal mountain. The ship's hull gleamed with strange patterns that hurt to look at directly. Within minutes, similar ships appeared over London, Tokyo, Moscow, and every other major city on Earth. President Elena Vasquez stood in the White House Situation Room, watching the news feeds from around the world. Her advisors talked in quick, worried voices, but she could barely hear them. After 200 years of space travel, after building colonies on 47 worlds, this was humanity's first contact with truly alien intelligence. And it did not look friendly. Madam President, General Harrison's voice cut through the noise. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. Universal Translator is working. They want to talk to Earth's leaders. All of them. Now, Elena looked at the faces around her. Some showed fear, others anger. A few tried to look brave, but she could see the worry in their eyes. She had been president for 6 years, had dealt with colony rebellions, asteroid mining disputes, and the usual problems of governing 3 billion people spread across dozens of star systems. But this was different. This was the moment that would define humanity's future. "Put them through," she said. The main screen flickered and showed something that made several people in the room step backward. The creature on the screen was tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow from within. Its head was too large for its body, and where humans had eyes, it had 3 dark holes that seemed to look right through the camera into everyone's souls. When it spoke, its voice was like ice cracking on a winter pond. "I am Ambassador Zethkri of the Veltaran Empire, speaking for the Galactic Coalition of Advanced Species. I address the primitive species known as humans." Elena felt her jaw clench at the word primitive, but she kept her face calm. "I am President Elena Vasquez, representing the United Earth Council and all human colonies. We welcome this first contact between our peoples." The alien's expression did not change. "This is not a diplomatic meeting. This is a delivery of terms. Your species has been observed and judged. You expand too quickly. You fight too often. You refuse to follow the natural order that has kept peace in this galaxy for 10,000 years. "Natural order?" Elena asked. "What do you mean?" "Advanced species guide lesser species. It has always been this way. Species that cannot govern themselves must accept guidance from those who can. Your kind refuses to understand this simple truth." Around the room, Elena could see her advisors getting angry. Admiral Rivera's hand was clenched into a fist. General Harrison's face was turning red. But Elena kept her voice level. "We govern ourselves just fine, Ambassador. We have laws, governments, peaceful trade between our colonies. We've had no major wars for over a century." "You lie," Zethkri said simply. "Your expansion into the Kepler sector has disrupted 3 mining operations belonging to coalition members. Your colonists on Barnard's World have refused to relocate despite orders from the local authority. Your military vessels patrol space that does not belong to you." Elena felt a cold anger building in her chest. Those mining operations were on planets we discovered and settled first. Barnard's World has been a human colony for 50 years, and we patrol our own territory to protect our own people. Territory. Zethkri seemed to find the word amusing. Primitive species do not own territory. They are given permission to use it under proper supervision. You will learn this truth. The alien leaned forward, and Elena could see that its skin was covered in tiny scales that shifted color as it moved. "I bring you the will of the coalition. 312 species have agreed. Humanity will comply with the following terms or face the consequences." A document appeared on screens around the room. Elena read it quickly, feeling her heart sink with every line. The terms were worse than surrender. They were slavery with official paperwork. "You have 72 standard cycles to comply," Zethkri continued. "First, all human military vessels will be decommissioned and handed over to coalition authority. Second, all human colonies beyond your home system will be evacuated and abandoned. Third, Earth will accept a coalition oversight committee to guide your development as a species. Fourth, all human space travel will require coalition approval. Fifth, your population will be limited to 2 billion individuals to prevent further aggressive expansion." The room was silent for a long moment. Elena looked at the document again, hoping she had misunderstood something. But the terms were clear. Humanity would become pets in a cage, allowed to exist only as long as they cause no trouble. "And if we refuse?" Elena asked quietly. Zethkree's 3 dark holes seemed to widen slightly. Your species numbers less than 5 billion across all worlds. The coalition represents trillions of beings on thousands of planets. We have technology your kind cannot imagine. Weapons that could turn your sun cold. Ships that move faster than light without the crude engines you use. If you refuse, you will be made to comply. You're talking about genocide, Admiral Rivera said, speaking for the first time. I am talking about correction, Zethkree replied. Dangerous species are contained or eliminated. The choice is yours. Elena stood up slowly. Every eye in the room was on her. Every human watching the broadcast around the world was waiting for her answer. The weight of humanity's future pressed down on her shoulders like a physical thing. We need time to discuss this with our colonies, she said finally. You have 72 cycles. When I return, you will give your answer. Choose wisely, President Vasquez. This galaxy has room for many species, but not for those who refuse to accept their place in it. The screen went dark. The alien ships remained in Earth's sky like dark clouds promising storms. Elena looked around the room at her advisors, her generals, her friends. They all looked shocked, scared, angry. She felt the same emotions, but underneath them was something else. Something that had kept humanity moving forward through 2 centuries of space exploration, through colony failures and pirate attacks and the 1,000 other dangers of the galaxy. General Harrison, she said, I need you to contact all colony governments. Emergency session. Admiral Rivera, I want to know exactly what military assets we have and where they are. Dr. Chen, start analyzing everything we know about coalition technology from that broadcast. Madam President, said Secretary of State Williams, surely we're not considering. The numbers alone. Elena turned to look at him. Williams was a good man, a smart diplomat who had served humanity well. But right now she could see only fear in his eyes. Fear of death, fear of war, fear of losing everything they had built among the stars. Secretary Williams, she said calmly, how many humans died building the first colony ship? About 3,000 in the construction accidents, but how many died when the colony on Ross 128 failed? 15,000, but that's not the same thing. How many died fighting the pirates in the Vega system? Williams was quiet now. Everyone in the room was listening. Every single one of those people, Elena continued, could have lived safe, quiet lives on Earth. They could have stayed home, never risked anything, never tried to reach for the stars, but they didn't. They chose to risk everything for freedom, for the chance to build something better. She walked to the window and looked up at the alien ships hanging in Earth's sky. These coalition species want us to crawl back into a cage. They want us to give up everything we've built, everything we've achieved, everything we could become. They want us to be grateful for the privilege of being their pets. Elena turned back to face the room. Her voice was steady, but everyone could hear the steel underneath it. I've been thinking about what humanity is really. What makes us different from these aliens who are so sure they know better than we do, and I think I know the answer. She picked up the terms document and held it up. They're offering us safety, security, a guaranteed existence under their protection. All we have to do is give up our freedom, our dreams, our right to choose our own path among the stars. Elena looked each person in the room in the eyes. But humans don't choose safety over freedom. We never have. When the British Empire told us to pay their taxes without representation, we chose war. When fascists tried to conquer the world, we chose to fight back. When the first colony ships might have been lost in the void between stars, we built them anyway. She tore the document in half. The coalition thinks they know humanity. They think they can predict our response. They're counting on us to be reasonable, to do the smart thing, to choose survival over principle. Elena threw the pieces of paper on the floor. They're wrong. We're not reasonable. We're not smart enough to know when we're beaten. And we've never chosen survival over freedom, not once in our entire history. Admiral Rivera stood up first, then General Harrison, then Dr. Chen. One by one, every person in the room rose to their feet. Madam President, Admiral Rivera said, what are your orders? Elena walked back to her chair and sat down. When she spoke, her voice carried to every human world through the quantum communication network. Contact every colony, every ship, every settlement. Tell them what the coalition demands. Tell them what we face. And then ask them the same question I'm asking all of you. She paused, looking at the faces around her, seeing the fear replaced by something stronger. Do we kneel? Or do we show these ancient, advanced, superior species what humanity really is? The answer came back from 47 worlds within 6 hours. It came from mining stations in asteroid belts and research outposts on frozen moons. It came from families who had built homes under alien suns and farmers who had made dead worlds bloom with Earth crops. The answer was always the same. Always the one word that had defined humanity since they first looked up at the stars and decided to reach for them. No. When Ambassador Zethkri returned 72 cycles later, expecting Earth's submission, President Elena Vasquez met him with a simple message that was broadcast simultaneously to every coalition world, every human settlement, and every species watching to see what would happen. You have offered us slavery and called it peace. You have demanded we abandon our children on distant worlds and called it wisdom. You have told us to surrender our dreams and called it maturity. Elena looked directly into the alien's 3 dark eyes. Ambassador Zethkri, on behalf of humanity and all our colonies, I give you our answer. No, we will not kneel. We will not surrender. We will not crawl back into a cage no matter how comfortable you make it. She stood up, and her next words would be remembered by every human for as long as the species existed. You want to know what humanity is? We are the species that looked at an endless ocean and built ships to cross it. We are the people who saw mountains and climbed them, saw deserts and crossed them, saw the sky and decided to fly. You offer us safety, but we choose freedom. You offer us your protection, but we choose our own path. Elena's voice grew stronger with each word. You have made your choice, Coalition. You have decided that human freedom is more dangerous than human slavery. Now face the consequences of that choice. Because we would rather die free among the stars than live as pets in your perfect, peaceful galaxy. The transmission ended. Within hours, the Coalition's Grand Fleet was on its way to Sol System. 10,000 ships carrying the combined military might of 312 species, coming to teach humanity its place in the galaxy. They expected to find a broken, desperate species ready to beg for mercy. They had no idea what they were really flying toward. Admiral Kethvar of the crystalline Nexari had lived for over 800 years. In that time, he had fought in 17 wars and commanded fleets that conquered 23 star systems. He had seen species kneel before the might of the Coalition and watched entire civilizations accept their proper place in the galactic order. This would be no different. His flagship, the Eternal Harmony, was larger than most human cities. Around it, 10,000 Coalition warships moved through space like a deadly metal river. The fleet represented 47 different species, each contributing their finest vessels and most experienced crews. This was the largest military force assembled in over 2,000 years. Status report, Kethvar commanded, his crystalline form reflecting the bridge lights and rainbow patterns. All ships report ready for combat. Admiral, replied his aide, a small furry creature from the Vectani worlds. Long-range sensors show minimal human activity in the outer system. A few patrol ships, some cargo vessels, nothing that could threaten even a single Coalition destroyer. Kethvar nodded. It was exactly what he had expected. Humans were known for their aggression, but they were not stupid. When faced with impossible odds, most species chose survival over pride. The Coalition fleet would enter the Sol system, demonstrate their overwhelming power, and humanity would surrender. A few days of occupation, some arrests of the more stubborn leaders, and it would be over. Admiral, called out his sensor operator, receiving a transmission from the human vessels. They're requesting to speak with the fleet commander. Put them through, Kethvar said. Perhaps the humans would be reasonable after all. The face that appeared on the screen was older than President Vasquez, with gray hair and tired eyes. But there was something in those eyes that made Kethvar pause. He had seen that look before in the final moments before desperate species made their last stands. I am Admiral Marcus Rivera, commanding the Sol Defense Fleet. You are entering human territory without permission. State your business or leave immediately. Kethvar almost laughed. The human defense fleet consisted of perhaps 50 ships, none larger than a Coalition escort vessel. It was like an ant threatening an elephant. I am Admiral Kethvar, commanding the Coalition Grand Fleet. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force. Rivera's expression did not change. Admiral, you have entered the home system of a free species with hostile intent. We cannot allow that. Cannot allow. Kethvar's crystal body rang like a bell as he laughed. Human, look at your sensors. Count my ships. Compare them to your pathetic fleet. You cannot stop us. Maybe not, Rivera said quietly. But we can make you pay for every meter of space you take. The transmission ended before Kethvar could respond. He stared at the blank screen for a moment, remembering the last time he had seen that look in an enemy's eyes. It had been during the Corvani rebellion 3 centuries ago. The Corvani had been surrounded, outnumbered, doomed to fail, but they had fought anyway, and it had taken 2 years and millions of casualties to finally defeat them. All ships battle formation, Kethvar ordered. Prepare for possible resistance. The first indication that this would not be a simple occupation came when the Coalition fleet reached the asteroid belt. The space between Mars and Jupiter was thick with mining stations, cargo ships, and the usual debris of industrial civilization. It looked normal, peaceful even. Then the asteroid started exploding, evasive maneuvers. Kethvar shouted as his flagship rocked under the impact of debris. "What's happening?" "Sir, the asteroids have been mined with explosives. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. They're creating a debris field." On the tactical display, Kethvar watched as his perfectly organized fleet formation dissolved into chaos. Ships scattered to avoid the clouds of rock and metal flying through space at deadly speeds. The debris itself was not dangerous to heavily armored Coalition warships, but it was thick enough to interfere with sensors and communications. "Clever," admitted his aide. "They're using the debris to break up our formation." Before Kethvar could respond, his sensor operator called out another warning. "Sir, multiple small craft approaching from all directions. They're using the debris field as cover." "Human fighters?" "No, sir, they appear to be civilian vessels. Cargo ships, mining craft, even passenger transports. But sir, they're all armed and heading directly for our ships." Kethvar had to admire the tactic, even as it frustrated him. The humans had turned every civilian vessel in the asteroid belt into a potential weapon. The Coalition's advanced sensors had trouble distinguishing between armed warships and converted cargo haulers hidden in the debris field. "All ships, open fire on any approaching vessel. These humans want to die, we can accommodate them." What followed was less like a battle and more like a deadly game of hide-and-seek. Human ships would appear from behind asteroids, fire their weapons at Coalition vessels, then disappear back into the debris field before the larger alien ships could respond effectively. The Coalition's superior firepower meant little when they could not target their enemies properly. "Admiral, we're receiving reports of casualties," his aide reported. 3 destroyers damaged, 1 escort vessel lost. The humans are targeting our smaller ships." "How many enemy vessels destroyed?" 17 confirmed, sir. But more keep appearing. They seem to have an endless supply of suicide craft. Kethvar watched the tactical display with growing frustration. Each human ship destroyed cost the Coalition valuable time and ammunition, while barely denting their overall strength. But the humans kept coming, wave after wave of them, as if the concept of retreat simply did not exist in their military doctrine. "Sir, incoming transmission from the human admiral." Rivera's face appeared on screen again. His ship had taken damage. Kethvar could see blast marks on the bulkheads behind him, but the human looked as determined as before. "Admiral Kethvar, you've been fighting in the asteroid belt for 6 hours now. How many ships have you lost?" "Fewer than you," Kethvar replied coldly. "True," Rivera admitted. "But I'm not done yet." "Are you?" "What do you mean?" Rivera smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "I mean, this is just the asteroid belt, Admiral. We have 7 more planets to defend before you reach Earth. Each one is going to cost you more ships, more time, more lives. The question is, how much are you willing to pay?" The transmission ended, leaving Kethvar staring at another blank screen. Around him, the bridge crew worked to coordinate the ongoing battle, but he could see uncertainty in their movements. This was not how Coalition military actions were supposed to go. There should have been a demonstration of power, followed by swift surrender. Instead, they were stuck in a grinding battle of attrition with an enemy that refused to acknowledge its defeat. "Admiral, we've cleared most of the asteroid belt," his tactical officer reported. "Estimate 70% of human resistance eliminated. What's our status?" 8 ships destroyed, 23 damaged. "We can continue the advance, but sir, the humans seem to be falling back toward Jupiter." Kethvar activated the long-range sensors and saw what his officer meant. Human ships were retreating toward Jupiter and its many moons. The largest gas giant in the Sol system was surrounded by industrial facilities, mining operations, and defense stations. It would be another battle like the asteroid belt, but potentially worse. "Sir, receiving another message from the human colonies," his communications officer announced. It's being broadcast on all frequencies to every ship in the system. Put it through. This time it was not a military officer on the screen, but a woman in civilian clothes. She looked young, maybe in her 30s, with short black hair and determined eyes. Behind her, Kethvar could see what looked like a factory floor, with workers moving equipment and preparing for something. My name is Maria Santos. I'm the supervisor of Mining Station 7 in the Jupiter system. I have 3,000 people working here, including my husband and 2 daughters. She paused, looking directly into the camera. The Coalition says we need to be controlled, that we're too dangerous to govern ourselves. They say advanced species know better than we do how we should live our lives. Maybe they're right. Maybe we are too dangerous. Maria held up what looked like a mining charge, the kind used to break apart asteroids. Because we'd rather blow up everything we've built than hand it over to you. Every station, every factory, every home we've made in this system. You want our worlds? Come and take them. But all you'll find is wreckage and the people who made it. The transmission ended, but it was immediately followed by another. This one showed a man in a military uniform standing on what appeared to be the bridge of a warship. Colonel James Park, commanding Titan Defense Station. To any Coalition forces heading our way, we have 47 nuclear missiles aimed at your fleet. We know we can't stop you all, but we can make sure some of you don't go home. Then another transmission, this one from Europa. Dr. Sarah Kim, civilian administrator. Population 40,000. We've been digging under the ice for 20 years. You'll have to come down here and drag us out cave by cave. And another from Ganymede. Captain Lisa Rodriguez, cargo fleet commander. We have 167 ships loaded with everything from food to antimatter. Some of us are running. Some of us are staying to fight. All of us are free. Kethvar listened to transmission after transmission, each one a message of defiance from humans who should have been terrified into submission. Instead, they sounded almost eager for the fight to come. It was like nothing he had ever encountered in 800 years of military service. Admiral, his aide said quietly, perhaps we should contact the Coalition Council. Request additional forces. Additional forces? Kethvar's crystalline form flared with indignation. We have 10,000 ships. The humans have maybe a few hundred scattered across the entire system. Yes, sir, but sir, they're not fighting like they expect to lose. That was the problem, Kethvar realized. Every military doctrine in Coalition space was based on the assumption that intelligent species would surrender when faced with overwhelming force. It was simple logic. Why throw away lives in a hopeless battle when you could live to fight another day? But these humans seemed to have thrown logic out the window. They fought like every battle was their last, like retreat was not even an option they considered. It was inefficient, wasteful, and completely insane. It was also working. All ships advance on Jupiter, Kethvar ordered. Maximum speed. We end this quickly. But even as he gave the order, he knew it would not be quick. The humans had turned their entire star system into a weapon, and they seemed perfectly willing to die using it. Every moon, every station, every scrap of metal floating in space could potentially hide another ambush, another surprise, another group of humans who thought freedom was worth dying for. As the Coalition fleet moved deeper into the Sol system, Admiral Kethvar found himself thinking about something the human admiral had said. How much was he willing to pay? The Coalition had always been able to overwhelm resistance through sheer numbers and superior technology. But what happened when the enemy refused to calculate odds, refused to surrender, refused to be reasonable? The battle for Jupiter would answer that question. And based on what he had seen so far, Kethvar was no longer certain he would like the answer. Behind the Coalition fleet, the asteroid belt burned with the wreckage of both human and alien ships. But the humans had accomplished something that had not happened in Coalition military history for over 1,000 years. They had made the impossible look possible, turned a hopeless last stand into something that resembled an actual fight, and they were just getting started. 6 months had passed since the Coalition fleet entered the Sol system, and Admiral Kethvar was beginning to understand why his predecessors had avoided long campaigns. What should have been a 3-day demonstration of power had become a grinding war of attrition that seemed to have no end. The battle for Jupiter had lasted 2 weeks. Every moon, every station, every piece of industrial infrastructure had to be taken individually. The humans did not simply defend these positions. They turned each one into a death trap. Mining facilities became bomb factories. Civilian transports became guided missiles. Research stations became fortresses that had to be destroyed completely because the humans inside refused to surrender. The worst part was that the humans kept talking. Not military communications or strategic discussions, but constant broadcasts from ordinary people. Families saying goodbye to each other. Workers explaining why they chose to stay at their posts rather than evacuate. Children sending messages to friends on other worlds. It was psychological warfare of a kind the Coalition had never encountered. "Admiral," his aide reported, "we've finally secured the Jupiter system. All major installations have been captured or destroyed." Casualties? 47 ships destroyed, 112 damaged. Estimated 30,000 Coalition personnel killed or wounded. Kethvar's crystalline form dimmed with shock. 30,000 casualties to take a single gas giant from an enemy that barely had a military to begin with. At this rate, they would lose half the fleet before reaching Earth. What about human losses? Difficult to estimate, sir. They destroyed most of their facilities rather than let us capture them. We estimate between 50 and 80,000 killed, but sir, they seem to consider this a victory. A victory? They lost everything. Yes, sir, but they made us pay for it. And they broadcast the entire battle to their colonies and the rest of the galaxy. Other species are taking notice. That was another problem Kethvar had not anticipated. The Coalition's military actions were usually conducted in private, with carefully managed information released to the public. But the humans had made this conflict public from the beginning. Every battle, every sacrifice, every moment of resistance was being broadcast across the galaxy. Sir, incoming transmission from Mars. It's the planetary governor. The screen showed a middle-aged woman with graying hair and tired eyes. She was standing in what looked like a command center, with displays showing defensive positions around the red planet. "Admiral Kethvar, I'm Governor Patricia Hayes. I understand you're headed our way." "Governor Hayes, you have the opportunity to avoid the fate of Jupiter. Surrender now and your people will be relocated safely to Earth." Hayes smiled, and Kethvar was starting to hate that expression when humans wore it. "Admiral, I've been on Mars for 30 years. I helped build the first dome cities, survived the dust storms that killed hundreds of people. Watched this world grow from a research outpost to a home for 12 million humans. You think I'm going to hand it over to you without a fight? Governor, be reasonable. You've seen what happened at Jupiter. You cannot stop us, maybe not, but we can slow you down. And every day we delay you is another day for our people to prepare, for our colonies to organize, for the galaxy to see what we're really fighting for." Hayes looked directly into the camera, and when she spoke, her voice carried to every human world in the galaxy. Mars was the first world humans terraformed. We took a dead planet and made it live. We built cities under alien skies and raised children who call this world home. The Coalition says advanced species should control us, that we need their guidance. But if we're so primitive, how did we turn a desert world into a garden? She paused, letting that question hang in the air. "We're not fighting for territory, Admiral Kethvar. We're fighting for the right to be human, the right to make our own mistakes, achieve our own victories, and live free under whatever sun we choose. If that makes us too dangerous for your perfect galaxy, then so be it." The transmission ended, but within an hour, similar messages were coming from human colonies across the galaxy. Each one was different, but they all carried the same theme. Humans would rather die free than live as pets. More troubling were the reports coming from Coalition worlds. Subject species that had been peacefully governed for centuries were suddenly asking uncomfortable questions. Why did they need the Coalition's permission to travel between worlds? Why couldn't they govern themselves? Why were humans considered dangerous for wanting the same freedoms that the Coalition species took for granted? Dr. Sarah Chen sat in her laboratory deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, surrounded by captured Coalition technology and the greatest collection of xenobiology experts humanity could assemble. For 6 months, they had been studying every piece of alien equipment they could get their hands on, looking for weaknesses, advantages, anything that might help humanity survive. What they had found was disturbing in ways they had not expected. The Coalition species are individually inferior to humans in almost every measurable way, Dr. Chen explained to the assembled military leaders. Their reaction times are slower, their problem-solving abilities are limited, and their capacity for individual initiative has been severely degraded. President Vasquez leaned forward. "What do you mean degraded?" I mean, they've been dependent on advanced technology and centralized decision-making for so long that they've lost the ability to think for themselves. Their military tactics are based on overwhelming force applied according to predetermined patterns. Their ships are highly automated, with most decisions made by artificial intelligence rather than crew members. General Harrison looked skeptical. If that's true, why are they winning? Because they have superior numbers and technology. But Madam President, I think we've been approaching this wrong. We've been trying to fight them ship to ship, weapon to weapon. But their real weakness isn't military. It's psychological. Dr. Chen activated a holographic display showing coalition fleet movements over the past 6 months. Look at their tactical decisions. Every single move follows predictable patterns based on established doctrine. They've had so few wars in recent centuries that they've forgotten how to adapt to unexpected situations. They're fighting us like we're a conventional enemy that will behave according to their models. But we're not, Admiral Rivera said slowly. Exactly. We're doing things that don't make sense according to their calculations. We're throwing away strategic advantages for symbolic victories. We're choosing to die rather than surrender. We're broadcasting our defeats as if they were triumphs. It's driving them crazy. President Vasquez stood up and walked to the window that showed the Earth's surface far above. Even here, deep underground, she could feel the weight of the alien ships hanging in orbit. Dr. Chen, are you suggesting we can actually win this war? No, Madam President. Not in any conventional sense. But I think we can do something more important than winning. We can change the galaxy. She brought up another display, this one showing communication intercepts from coalition worlds. These are conversations we've been monitoring from subject species across coalition space. Look at the language patterns, the questions they're asking. 6 months ago, they accepted coalition authority without question. Now they're talking about concepts that didn't exist in their vocabularies before. Individual rights, self-determination, freedom of choice. General Harrison leaned back in his chair. We're not just fighting a war. We're starting a revolution. A revolution that could spread to hundreds of worlds, thousands of species. The coalition's entire power structure is based on the assumption that advanced species naturally rule less advanced ones. But what if that assumption is wrong? Dr. Chen brought up one more display, showing the results of her psychological analysis of coalition command structures. I've been studying their decision-making patterns, and I've found something interesting. The coalition species aren't more advanced than humans. They're older. They've had more time to develop technology, to build institutions, to create stable societies. But somewhere along the way, they stopped growing as individuals. She highlighted specific data points on the display. They've optimized their civilizations for stability, not progress, for order, not freedom, for collective decision-making, not individual initiative. In evolutionary terms, they've reached a plateau. They've stopped evolving, and humans haven't, President Vasquez said. Humans are still growing, still changing, still reaching for things beyond our grasp. That's what makes us dangerous to them. Not our weapons or our ships, but our refusal to accept limitations. Admiral Rivera spoke up. So what do you recommend, Doctor? Dr. Chen smiled, and it was the same expression that was spreading across human faces throughout the galaxy. The look of people who had decided to risk everything for an idea. I recommend we give the galaxy what it's never had before, an example of what a truly free species looks like. Not just in our military actions, but in our response to this crisis. We show them that humans would rather die fighting than live kneeling. Above them, the coalition fleet continued its slow advance toward Earth. Mars had fallen after a month-long siege that cost them another 100 ships and 60,000 casualties. The orbital stations around Venus were putting up fierce resistance, turning the inner system into another killing ground. But something else was happening across the galaxy. On coalition worlds that had been peaceful for millennia, subject species were beginning to ask questions their rulers could not answer. Why should advanced age grant the right to rule? Why should superior technology justify political control? Why should anyone have to ask permission to be free? The revolution Dr. Chen had identified was spreading faster than the coalition could contain it. Human broadcasts were being secretly copied and transmitted from world to world. The story of humanity's resistance was becoming something larger than military history. It was becoming proof that freedom was possible, even against impossible odds. In the depths of space, coalition ships moved toward Earth with growing reluctance. Their crews had signed up to conduct a police action against an unruly species. Instead, they found themselves in the middle of a war that was changing everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. Admiral Kethvar stood on his bridge, watching the tactical displays show the latest casualty reports. They were winning every battle, advancing steadily toward the human homeworld. But victory was starting to feel like defeat. His aide approached carefully. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from the homeworlds. There have been incidents." "What kind of incidents?" "Protests on 7 coalition worlds. Subject species demanding the same rights humans are fighting for. There was a riot on Veltaran Prime. 3 colonial governments have requested military assistance to maintain order." Kethvar felt a chill run through his crystalline form. The coalition had not needed to use military force on its own worlds for over 2,000 years. The idea that their perfectly ordered society could be disrupted by the example of one stubborn species was almost impossible to believe. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "receiving another human broadcast. It's coming from Earth itself." President Vasquez appeared on screen, looking older than she had 6 months ago, but no less determined. Behind her, Kethvar could see the ruins of what had once been a major city, evidence of the orbital bombardments that had been softening Earth's defenses. "To all species watching this transmission," Vasquez began, "my name is Elena Vasquez, and I speak for the last free humans in this galaxy. Our cities are burning. Our fleets are destroyed. Our people are dying. According to any reasonable calculation, we should surrender." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "But humans have never been reasonable. We've spent our entire history doing impossible things for the simple reason that they needed to be done. We crossed oceans that had no far shore. We climbed mountains that touched the sky. We built ships to carry us to the stars, not because it was easy, but because we refused to be trapped on one small world." Vasquez's voice grew stronger. "The Coalition offers us a choice, submit or die. But they don't understand that for humans, those are the same thing. A life without freedom is no life at all. A civilization without the right to choose its own path is already dead." She stood up, and behind her, Kethvar could see humans working frantically to prepare for the final battle. "We know we cannot win this war in any conventional sense, but we can do something more important. We can show the galaxy what freedom looks like. We can prove that no species, no matter how advanced or powerful, has the right to chain another." The camera pulled back, showing the devastated cityscape around the presidential bunker. "This is our gift to the galaxy, the knowledge that freedom is always possible no matter the odds. Every species watching this knows what we're fighting for because deep in their hearts they want it too." Vasquez looked directly at the camera one final time. "To the Coalition fleet approaching Earth, you have the power to destroy us, but you cannot destroy the idea we represent. Freedom is not something you can kill with weapons or contain with treaties. It lives in the heart of every thinking being who refuses to kneel." The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Kethvar staring at a blank screen and wondering if humanity had already won the only victory that mattered. Deep beneath the Cheyenne Mountain complex, President Elena Vasquez watched the tactical displays that showed coalition forces breaking through Earth's final orbital defenses. The battle had been raging for 3 days, and everyone in the command center knew it was almost over. The coalition fleet had lost nearly half its ships getting this far, but they still had enough firepower to turn Earth's surface to glass. "Madam President," General Harrison reported, "Beijing, Moscow, and New Tokyo are gone. Coalition forces have begun planetary bombardment of major population centers. Estimated casualties in the first wave, 40 million dead." Elena closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of every life lost in humanity's desperate stand. But when she opened them again, her resolve was stronger than ever. "Dr. Chen, is the Wildfire protocol ready?" Dr. Sarah Chen looked up from her console, her face pale but determined. "Ready for activation, Madam President. All human colonies have confirmed receipt and are standing by. We also have confirmation that our message packages have been successfully distributed to subject species on over 200 coalition worlds." "What exactly are we unleashing, Doctor?" Dr. Chen brought up a holographic display showing the extent of their covert operations over the past year. While coalition forces had been focused on the military campaign, humanity had been fighting a different kind of war entirely. "Madam President, we've spent the last year reverse engineering coalition technology, but more importantly, we've been studying their society. What we found is that the coalition's entire power structure depends on information control and the acceptance of authority by subject species. She highlighted specific data points on the display. For over 10,000 years, the coalition has maintained order by limiting communication between worlds, controlling access to technology, and ensuring that subject species never question the fundamental assumptions of their society. They've created a galaxy where freedom is literally unthinkable. And we're about to change that, Admiral Rivera said. More than change it. We're about to shatter it completely. Dr. Chen activated another display showing communication networks across the galaxy. Every human colony has been secretly in contact with subject species on coalition worlds. We haven't just been sharing our military actions. We've been sharing our ideas. Concepts that don't exist in most coalition languages. Individual rights, democratic governance, the right to rebel against unjust authority. Elena stood up and walked to the display. Even with coalition ships raining death on the surface above, she felt a moment of pride at what her species had accomplished. We've been teaching them to be human, she said quietly. In a sense, yes. We've been showing them that advanced technology doesn't grant the right to rule, that age doesn't justify tyranny, and that no species has to accept subjugation just because it's traditional. General Harrison looked skeptical. Doctor, that's all very philosophical, but how does it help us now? Coalition forces will be landing on Earth within hours. Dr. Chen smiled, and Elena recognized the expression. It was the look humans wore when they were about to do something impossible. General, what do you think happens when 3 billion subject beings on 200 different worlds suddenly stop obeying orders? When they start demanding the same rights humans are dying for? When they realize they outnumber their rulers by 1,000,000 to 1? The answer came faster than anyone expected. Madam President, the communications officer called out. We're receiving reports from Coalition Space. Massive civil unrest on Veltran Prime, the Nexari homeworld, and 47 other Coalition core systems. Subject species are demanding immediate political reform. Elena felt her heart skip a beat.
Already?
It gets better, ma'am. We're intercepting Coalition military communications. They're pulling ships from the invasion fleet to deal with rebellions on their own worlds. Admiral Kethvar stared at the reports coming in from across Coalition space with growing horror. This was not supposed to happen. Subject species had been peaceful, compliant, grateful for Coalition guidance for thousands of years. They were supposed to see humanity's destruction as proof that rebellion was futile. Instead, they seemed to view it as inspiration. Admiral, his aide reported with barely concealed panic, the situation is deteriorating rapidly. The government of Veltran Prime has declared martial law, but the local security forces are refusing to fire on protesters. On Nexari 7, subject species have seized control of the planetary communication network and are broadcasting demands for independence. How is this possible? Kethvar demanded. These species have accepted coalition authority for millennia. Sir, intelligence reports suggest the humans have been in secret communication with subject populations for over a year. They've been spreading what our analysts are calling revolutionary ideology. On the main screen, Kethvar could see Earth hanging in space below his fleet, its surface scarred by bombardment but still defiant. Somehow this one small world had managed to set the entire galaxy on fire. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, incoming orders from Coalition Command. We're to suspend the invasion and return half our forces to deal with the rebellions. Suspend the invasion? We're hours away from final victory. Yes, sir, but sir, if we don't stop the rebellions, there may not be a coalition left to return to. Kethvar felt something he had never experienced in 800 years of service, the sensation of complete strategic failure. Not military defeat, but the collapse of everything he had fought to protect. On the surface of Earth, the reprieve came just as coalition landing forces were preparing their final assault. Elena watched the tactical displays with amazement as enemy ships suddenly changed course and headed back toward the outer system. Madam President, General Harrison reported, coalition forces are withdrawing from Earth orbit. It looks like they're preparing to leave the system entirely. Why would they retreat when they're so close to victory? Her answer came from Dr. Chen, who was monitoring communications from across the galaxy with an expression of wonder. Because we've already won, Madam President. Not the military campaign, but the war that really mattered. She brought up a galaxy-wide communication display showing the scope of the rebellions. 74 coalition worlds are experiencing civil unrest. Subject species on over 300 planets are demanding political reform. The coalition's core worlds are paralyzed by protests, strikes, and outright rebellion. Elena stared at the display, hardly daring to believe what she was seeing. We did this? We showed them it was possible. For 10,000 years, the coalition has maintained order by convincing subject species that resistance was hopeless. But we proved that wasn't true. We showed them that even the most powerful empire can be challenged by people who refuse to accept their chains. Admiral Rivera spoke up from his command station. Madam President, we're receiving a transmission from the coalition fleet. Admiral Kethavar wants to discuss terms. Terms? What terms could he possibly offer now? I think, Madam President, he wants to surrender. The conversation that followed would be remembered as one of the most important diplomatic exchanges in galactic history. Admiral Kethavar appeared on screen looking older than his 800 years. His crystalline form dimmed with exhaustion and defeat. President Vasquez, he began formally, I am authorized by the Coalition Council to offer a cessation of hostilities. What are your terms, Admiral? Complete human autonomy within your current territory. No coalition oversight. No restrictions on your expansion or development. In exchange, you call off your revolutionary activities and help us restore order to coalition space. Elena almost laughed. Admiral, you're asking us to help you put our friends back in chains. Your friends are destroying civilizations that have stood for millennia. The galaxy is descending into chaos. No, Admiral. The galaxy is waking up. Elena stood up, and when she spoke, her words were broadcast to every world where the revolution was taking hold. For 10,000 years, the coalition has ruled through fear and the illusion that resistance was impossible. But we've proven that illusion false. Every species watching this knows they have a choice. Accept the chains their masters offer or fight for the freedom they deserve. She looked directly at Kethavar's image on screen. Admiral, you came here to teach humanity its place in the galaxy. Instead, you've learned something about us that you should have known from the beginning. Humans don't accept their place. We make our own place wherever we choose to stand. Elena's voice carried across space to worlds where beings were standing up to their oppressors for the first time in their species' history. The age of the coalition is over, not because we destroyed it with weapons, but because we destroyed the idea that justified its existence. We've shown the galaxy that no species has the right to rule another, that advancement in technology doesn't grant political authority, and that freedom is not a gift to be granted by the powerful, but a right to be claimed by the brave. Admiral Kethavar made one last attempt to salvage his mission. President Vasquez, you're making a mistake. The coalition has kept peace for 10,000 years. Without our guidance, the galaxy will descend into war and chaos. Maybe, Elena admitted. Growing up is never easy, and freedom always comes with risks. But the alternative is eternal childhood, where entire species spend their lives as pets in someone else's garden. She paused, looking at the reports streaming in from across the galaxy. Admiral, your coalition offered the galaxy order at the price of freedom. We're offering them freedom at the price of order. Let's see which one they choose. The answer was already becoming clear. On world after world, subject species were choosing the chaos of freedom over the safety of chains. It would not be easy, and it would not be peaceful, but for the first time in galactic history, billions of beings were making their own choices about their own futures. Admiral Kethavar closed the communication channel and turned to his bridge crew. Around him, he could see the fear and uncertainty in their alien faces. The galaxy they had known, the order they had served, the certainty they had lived by, all of it was crumbling. Admiral, his aide asked quietly, "What are your orders?" Kethavar looked at the tactical display showing Earth hanging in space below them, scarred but unbroken. One small world had changed everything. Not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through the simple refusal to kneel. "Signal the fleet," he said finally. "We're going home. What's left of it." As the coalition fleet withdrew from the Sol system, they left behind something they could never reclaim: the illusion that their rule was natural, inevitable, and eternal. Humanity had shattered that illusion completely, and the pieces would never fit back together again. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would the coalition species, who were about to learn what it meant to live in a universe where freedom was not just a human concept, but a galactic revolution. 18 months after the Coalition fleet withdrew from the Sol system, President Elena Vasquez sat in the ruins of what had once been Geneva, recording what she knew would be her final message to the galaxy. The radiation sickness was winning its slow war against her body, a parting gift from the orbital bombardments that had scarred Earth's surface. But her mind was still sharp, and she had something important to say. The emergency bunker beneath Mount Cheyenne had become humanity's de facto capital after the major cities fell. Here, in the depths of a hollowed-out mountain, the survivors of Earth's government continued their work of rebuilding a shattered world and managing a galactic revolution that had grown far beyond anything they had imagined. Dr. Chen, Elena called to her chief advisor, who looked almost as tired as she felt. "Are you ready to record the final transmission?" "Yes, Madam President. We have confirmed links to every major communication network in the galaxy. The message will reach over 10,000 worlds simultaneously." Elena nodded and walked slowly to the recording station. Around her, the remaining members of her staff worked quietly at their stations, managing the flood of reports coming in from across the galaxy. The revolution they had started was still spreading, still growing, still changing everything. "Status report first, Doctor. I want to know how we've changed the galaxy before I say goodbye to it." Dr. Chen brought up the holographic displays that had become familiar over the past year and a half. But instead of showing Coalition fleet movements, they now showed something far more complex: the complete breakdown of the old galactic order. "Madam President, the Coalition as we knew it has effectively ceased to exist. 47 core worlds have declared independence from Coalition authority. Over 200 subject species have established their own governments. The remaining Coalition leadership controls perhaps 30% of their former territory." Elena smiled despite the pain that was becoming constant now. "And the violence? Less than we feared, more than we hoped. There have been 17 major conflicts between newly independent species and Coalition loyalists. But there have also been over 300 peaceful transitions to self-governance. Most species seem to prefer negotiation to warfare. They're learning to be free," Elena observed. "It takes practice, and yes, ma'am. But there's more. We're receiving reports that some of the newly independent species are forming their own alliances, their own trade agreements, their own defensive pacts. They're creating something new." Elena felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the radiation damage to her organs. A galaxy of free species choosing their own paths. "It's not perfect, Madam President. There are conflicts, territorial disputes, trade wars. Some of the new governments are making terrible mistakes, but they're their own mistakes to make." Elena walked to the window that showed the scarred surface of Earth far above. The planet would recover eventually. Humans were already beginning the long process of healing their wounded world, but she would not live to see it. "What about humanity's colonies?" she asked. "All 47 colony worlds survived the war and most are thriving. They're providing aid and advice to newly independent species, sharing technology and governmental models. Humanity has become something of a mentor species for worlds seeking to establish their own freedom." "Ironic," Elena mused. "The Coalition called us too primitive to govern ourselves. Now half the galaxy is asking us to teach them how to do it." She turned back to the recording station, feeling the weight of history settling on her shoulders one final time. "Dr. Chen, I want you to make sure this message reaches every world, every species, every being in the galaxy who played a part in what we've accomplished. They need to understand what they've achieved." "Yes, Madam President." Recording in 3, 2, 1. Elena looked directly into the camera, and when she spoke, her voice carried the authority of a species that had changed the galaxy forever. "To all the species of this galaxy, to every being who chose freedom over safety, courage over comfort, I am Elena Vasquez, speaking for the last time as President of the United Earth Council." She paused, gathering her strength. 18 months ago, the Galactic Coalition came to humanity with an ultimatum: surrender your freedom or face destruction. They believed, as they had for 10,000 years, that superior force could compel obedience from any species. They were wrong. The camera pulled back slightly, showing the scars that radiation had left on her face, the price of humanity's resistance. "We did not defeat the Coalition through superior firepower or advanced technology. We defeated them through the simple refusal to accept their authority over our lives. We showed the galaxy something it had forgotten, that no species, no matter how ancient or powerful, has the right to chain another." Elena stood up slowly, her body protesting every movement but her voice growing stronger. But this message is not about humanity's victory. It is about what you, every species listening to this transmission, have accomplished in the months since our war ended. She activated a display showing the current state of galactic civilization. 200 species have thrown off the chains of coalition rule. 47 worlds that had known only subjugation for thousands of years have declared their independence. Billions of beings who had never imagined they had a choice now govern themselves. Elena's voice filled with pride, not for humanity alone, but for every species that had chosen to stand up. You have created something unprecedented in galactic history. A civilization based on choice rather than force, freedom rather than order, the rights of individuals rather than the power of empires. She paused, looking directly into the camera. The coalition told you that you needed their guidance, that you were too primitive, too dangerous, too unpredictable to govern yourselves. They said that only advanced species could maintain peace and order. But look around you now. Look at what you have built without their permission. Elena activated another display showing trade routes, diplomatic agreements, and cooperative projects between the newly free worlds. You have formed alliances based on mutual benefit rather than submission. You have resolved conflicts through negotiation rather than conquest. You have shared knowledge, technology, and culture as equals, rather than as subjects and masters. You have proven that freedom does not lead to chaos but to growth. Her expression grew more serious. I will not lie to you. Freedom is not easy. It requires constant vigilance, difficult choices, and the courage to make mistakes. Some of your new governments will fail. Some of your conflicts will lead to war. Some of your experiments in democracy will disappoint you. Elena's voice grew firm. But those will be your failures, your conflicts, your disappointments. You will own them completely, just as you will own your successes. And that ownership, that responsibility for your own fate, is what makes a species truly free. She walked back to the window, looking up at the stars that were just becoming visible through Earth's scarred atmosphere. The coalition believed that order was more important than freedom, that peace was more valuable than choice, that stability justified any amount of oppression. But you have proven them wrong. You have shown that beings who choose their own paths, make their own mistakes, and forge their own destinies will always be stronger than those who accept the chains their masters offer. Elena turned back to the camera for her final words. To the coalition species who still cling to the old ways, who still believe that might makes right and age grants authority, I say this. You made a choice 18 months ago. You chose to try to break the one species in this galaxy that would never break. You chose to use force against those who valued freedom above life itself. You chose to teach us that compromise with tyranny is impossible. Her voice grew cold, carrying the weight of every human who had died defending their freedom. Now face the consequences of that choice. You wanted to rule a galaxy of slaves, but instead, you have created a galaxy of rebels. You wanted to maintain order, but instead you have unleashed chaos. You wanted to demonstrate your power, but instead you have revealed your weakness. Elena smiled, and it was not entirely pleasant. This is humanity's gift to the galaxy, the knowledge that freedom is always possible. This is our curse upon tyrants, that their victims will always remember they have a choice. She looked directly into the camera one final time. To every species, every world, every being that chooses to stand up and say we will not kneel, remember this moment. Remember that a single small world changed the fate of the galaxy, not through conquest but through example. Remember that freedom is not something that can be given or taken away, but something that lives in the heart of every being brave enough to claim it. Elena's voice grew softer, but no less determined. The Age of Empires is ending. The time of free species has begun. Make it worthy of the price we paid to see it born. The recording ended, but within hours the message was spreading across the galaxy faster than light itself. It was copied, translated, broadcast, and shared on 10,000 worlds where beings were still learning what it meant to be free. On the crystal spires of Velterran Prime, protesters held up signs written in their own language but carrying a human message. We will not kneel. On the industrial worlds of the former Nexari Empire, workers who had served alien masters for 1,000 generations elected their own leaders for the first time in their species' history. On the agricultural planets of the Outer Rim, farmers who had grown food for coalition cities began selling their crops to whoever offered the best price. discovering the power of economic freedom. And on Earth, in the depths of a mountain bunker, Elena Vasquez closed her eyes for the last time, knowing that humanity had given the galaxy the most precious gift possible. The knowledge that chains could be broken, that tyrants could be defied, and that freedom was always worth fighting for. The galaxy would never be perfect. Species would still fight, governments would still fail, and tyrants would still try to rise, but never again would they be able to claim that resistance was hopeless, that freedom was impossible, or that any being had to accept chains just because their masters called them natural. Humanity had lit a fire among the stars that would burn forever, and no empire in the galaxy would ever again be safe from the simple, revolutionary idea that every thinking being deserved to be free. Dr. Sarah Chen stood over Elena's still form and whispered the words that had become humanity's epitaph for their fallen president. She showed us all what freedom looked like. Then she turned back to her work, because there was still a galaxy to change, still species to help, still freedom to spread to every star that shone in the darkness. The revolution was far from over, and humanity had promises to keep to the worlds they had helped liberate. The coalition had come to Sol seeking to demonstrate their power over one rebellious species. Instead, they had discovered that some ideas are more powerful than fleets, some principles stronger than empires, and some species too stubborn to ever accept their place in someone else's galaxy. The age of the coalition was over. The age of freedom had begun, and it would never end.